Hello, Reddit folks. My name is Daniel Zita. I am with my wife, Stephanie, and we are on New Story Farm, and we are located north of Hutchins, Minnesota, in south central Minnesota. Um, I've been asked to read a few questions and respond to some of them. So here we go. Saxman Steve asks, I'm curious to know your thoughts about urban sharecropping as a tool, not only to increase food security, but also as a means of education. Most people live in urban areas, and so having small farms be visible in people's day to day lives could be quite transformational when it comes to education and awareness. Do you know of any such initiatives? Do you think it's something worth pursuing? Hell yes. I think that there are a lot of opportunities for cities to be less destructive, and I there's no end to the possibilities, to be honest. Like, there's millions of acres of lawn that are taking up nothing but real estate and valuable real resources, and we could be converting all of them to food production. Do I know of any initiatives right now? I do know most urban centers that I've been in have some project or some initiative where people will go and knock on doors and ask if people will give up their lawns. They will plant out a garden for them, and they will share some of the produce with them, and they will sell the rest of the produce at a market. I mean, that's sharecropping, I guess. That's urban sharecropping. So yeah, I think it's going to have an impact by it being in people's eyesight when they're walking past? Maybe, hopefully. So yeah, if you're committed to living an urban lifestyle, there's a lot of opportunities, and I invite you to seek them out. Uh, Konak Joy asks, are you working with indigenous land stewards in your area or otherwise helping them to reconnect their sacred lands? We reached out to the tribes that were once native to this area, and we got a response saying you should visit our um, museum. We couldn't find anybody that was interested in what we're doing when we reached out a number of years ago. I'd like to reach out again, but at the same time, we have a lot of open door policy here, where we have donation based workshops. We run homeschool groups. We have a land based meetup every month during the growing season. We have internships. We have a lot of opportunities for people that want to get involved. And I I mean, I would love to find somebody from a native tribe that has interest in ecological restoration of this ecology and agricultural regenerative agriculture. I haven't found one yet. Do they exist? I'm sure they do. I just can't find them, and I don't know how to find them. If you know how to find them, and you know somebody in my area that would be interested in this, whether they're native or not, I don't really care at this point. I just want people. I want human beings to actually give a shit about regenerative agriculture. And if you're one of those people, good on you. Let's see here. Mooey Daddy Longlegs asks, how do you plan to handle a heat dome when it comes? I asked this having lost 20 to 30% of a planting yield from my early May heat dome. Are you seeing an increase in certain animals detrimental to regen ag efforts, like rodents eating seeds? I say this having lost lots of seed yield due to mice, rats, and voles. Is it true farming is difficult to make a profit today? Oh my goodness, if you have to ask that question, you're not a farmer. Do you think it's still possible to practice natural farming such as Masanobu Fukuoka has? I find it largely impossible due to animals literally starving out there, so they will eat almost all my efforts to spread my food forest. Thanks. All right, so as far as there's a couple of questions in here. The next one actually is very similar in extreme weather events, and I just want to say that the beauty. the beauty of regenerative agriculture is that you're just working to rebuild a functioning ecology that also happens to have some plants and animals that humans can consume. We are just basically reinserting ourselves into a natural ecological system that isn't exactly natural, but at the same time, like indigenous people that lived here for the last 15, 20,000 years, they were planting food forests. They were like domesticating. Well, they weren't domesticating, but they were edging towards finding plants, and they were helping them. They were co-evolving with plants and trees and animals that would make it so they were better suited for helping humans live there too. So it was a positive feedback loop. And so we're just trying to build a system again that is super resilient and super healthy. So if there is extreme weather events like there has been for the last 4 to 5 years, we've had unheard of droughts here in south central Minnesota. I've never seen anything like it, and it's been tough because we don't have much clay on our farm. We have sandy loam soil, and it's been difficult. We actually put in a new well system so we could irrigate more just this year. But a lot of this revolves around the soil too. In this region, the soil organic matter before white people came along and tilled up all the tallgrass prairie was 12 to 15%. The average topsoil organic matter in this region right now is just over 1%. And on this farm, we have a soil organic matter of around 5 to 6%, which is a lot better than our neighbors, but it's still got a lot way. We got a long way to go. But I would say that in my lifetime we'll be cracking into the double digits again when we have more organic matter in our soil. Our water holding capacity is greatly increased, as well as our infiltration rate. So when we have biblical flooding events like we have seen in the last 15 years, when we do get rain, we tend to get a lot of it in a very short period of time. Our soils can infiltrate that water much, much faster and hold it longer than soils that have less soil organic matter. And so that's one of the beauties of regenerative agriculture, is that using animals in a perennial system really greatly increases soil organic matter quickly. There's ways of increasing that soil organic matter with regenerative farming efforts that are more crop-based, using cover crops and other techniques, but that's just not what we're doing. We're using animals in a perennial system. So, and then the next question is Star Spangled Zunzi asks, do you have any thoughts on how permaculture will contend with extreme weather events like whipsaw temperature changes, severe sudden frosts or thaws, heat domes, rain bombs? For example, permaculture suggests you can build swales on your land to contend with flooding, but will swales be enough to contend with rain bombs of several months' worth of historical precipitation? I just talked about that. Related question, our homestead planning group concerns with extreme weather has pushed our development model to center greenhouses for production to provide more protection from an increasingly hostile outside environment. Is there a way to integrate/incorporate greenhouses into a general permaculture approach? How feasible is it to create a food forest in a greenhouse environment? Wouldn't one need a very large greenhouse space to incorporate a viable ecosystem? Yes, I do. So there's a lot to unpack in there too. I feel like if people are coming at this from a fear point of view, they're going to want to try to control everything revolving around food production. And if you're trying to do that, and that's your only main motivation, is to somehow have the most secure calorie output for a given input, then maybe growing a food forest in under a gigantic greenhouse, maybe that's the answer. That's just not where I'm coming from. I'm coming at my main motivation is love. My main motivation is love for the natural world, love for my ecology, love for the earth, and I'm just part of this ecology. And if the parameters shift to that point where I can't even grow food here to survive, that means that all of my other brothers and sisters, plant-based or animal-based, in this ecology are probably all going to die too. So I don't really want to stick around if that's the case. So I'm growing, and Stephanie and I are growing a very resilient system by throwing a whole lot of stuff at the wall and just seeing what sticks. We're planting trees that aren't really meant to be growing in this climate zone. Hoping that maybe we'll be on one side or the other of that climate zone and maybe they'll survive. We don't know. We're just trying a lot of things, and by planting just a lot of different things and most of it being perennial, if there's certain years where certain berries don't grow because of certain weather patterns, a drought, too much rain, too hot, too cold, too quick of a thaw, too quick of a freeze. There's all these different fruits and all these different nuts that we have and all these different berries and all these different plants. Um, if there's certain things that don't make it that year, other things will. There's always going to be something that will. And so we're not looking at possibly starving unless it just absolutely ecological collapse. And like again, I just don't care at that point. So I'm banking on resilience in the system by replicating a healthy ecology rather than trying to control it. So I don't know how else to answer that question. Because if you're going to go down that road of like, I want to just build a gigantic greenhouse big enough for it to have a functioning ecology under it, I would say, like, what's to stop you from just going to the next level of building a high rise vertical farming system in the suburbs? It's just not my shtick. I don't think it's the answer. Oh, and I should go back there. The previous question they asked about Fukuoka, who wrote a book called The One Straw Revolution. He was a natural farmer in the mountains of Japan. Do I think that could work here? I don't know. Fukuoka was a really brilliant man, and his method of farming was a very laissez-faire approach to farming. He took seeds, balled them up in some clay, just threw them out on the hillside where he lived. And as far as I'm concerned, one of the reasons why that works so well for him is that it was a monsoonal area. We don't have monsoons here. I don't know if it would work. And to be honest, our systems that we've got developed, which is mostly just going back to what my ancestors did, and it's like a hybrid of what my ancestors did pre-industrial revolution, pre-green revolution, and what the indigenous people did of just like, I just want to grow plants that want to be here. I want to raise animals that want to be here because they evolved to be in ecologies like this. To me, that's the most resilient way that we can do this. All right. Charizard Voracidus, man, that's a mouthful, asks whether one belongs to the school of thought that says it has already happened or the school of thought that says it is many years in the future. Peak oil is coming and eventually no oil. When it really kicks in, people won't have any way of accessing bulk ammonium, nitrate, urea, phosphates, or potash, which will make compost and manure for the most economically viable fertilizers. Loss of diesel fuels will also mean shorter transport networks. This implies that in the future, using high-quality arable land as a mix of some row crop land and some livestock pasture will have a higher quantity of crop output than pure cropland, simply because, if not for locally generated fertilizers, Some areas would have no fertilizers at all. So I've never bought potash. I've never bought urea. I've never bought fertilizer. I just collect all of the bedding and the shit from our cows because we have to overwinter cows because we live in a world where people believe in private property ownership and there's fences everywhere. If I could cut all the fences and we could go back to living like the indigenous folks and I could just shoot a buffalo every few months for my family or my community, I'd do that. I can't do that in today's world. So we're using cattle as a proxy. We're using a lot of fencing. We're moving them consistently throughout the growing season. But during the winter, where the bison would normally go south and graze in Missouri or further south yet, and then come back up to the Midwest during the growing season, it's not something that we can do. So our cows, that we've got a dry lot, we've got a pole shed that they can weather in, and we put up hay during the growing season, and we feed them hay for 6 months. It is energy intensive in the fact that we have to run machines. I run an old tractor that my grandpa bought in 1956, and we bale hay. And but there's a lot of we have a lot of poop. We have a lot of damn poop with this system, and we have to have the bedding for the cows to bed down in. Otherwise, they'd be sitting in their own shit. So we have a lot of straw. When we grow grains, we put up straw or whatever hay that they don't eat out of the feeder. I put back into um, their shelter, and they just use that for bedding. But either way, at the end of the winter, there is a massive pile of shit and straw, and it's the perfect ratio of carbon nitrogen for a really healthy compost heap. And I pile that up, and it gets super hot. It goes thermophilic, and you can see that stuff just steaming for the next couple months through April, May, and it just shrinks in size. And by mid to late summer, it's just beautiful, friable compost, and I can spread that on my fields for fertility, and I do. So that's where all of our fertility comes from, and that's one of the reasons why I'm an advocate for regenerative agriculture, where you have a diversified system, and livestock is part of that diversified system. So yeah, we don't have to be using any mind fertility sources when we can just be creating it in the system itself. Uh, in your experience, are the permaculturalist communities you've encountered willing to include some pigs, chickens, goats, etc. in their efforts, or are they unfamiliar with the numbers? You have some cattle, but are your contemporaries skeptical of mixed strategies or of a shared mentality? I don't I don't really think that you could call yourself a permaculturalist if you don't think that there is merit to having animals in your system. I would think that the only people that would go that far are vegans, and I don't know if vegans could call themselves permaculturalists because they're missing a large component of a functioning ecology. There is no vegan ecology. There are every ecology has evolved with plants and animals. There is no, yeah. Anyway, you get it. Um, so if you're looking for a a resilient system, it's got to have both. So I think that's it. That's all the questions that I've got in front of me. I've enjoyed talking to y'all. I would invite any other questions. Um, if you're interested in what we're doing, newstoryfarm.com. If you feel compelled to support us, there's ways on the website. You can become a tree sponsor or a tree parent, because we plant hundreds of trees every year, and unfortunately, like one of the questions asked if farming is profitable. This no, no, farming is not profitable. If you took away the $182 billion a year in direct and indirect crop subsidies for big ag or industrial agriculture, it would collapse. And unfortunately, there are no direct or indirect subsidies for regenerative farming. And so, yeah, we don't even call ourselves farmers. We're basically just massive homesteaders. We don't sell much of anything other than some beef when we have an excess, and that's by design. We it's a losing game to try to make the farm pay for itself, because our culture, as it sits right now, values food so little that you're if you were to try to figure out what your wage per hour would be, it would be much less than minimum wage. You're probably talking like $2-3 an hour if I figured out my time, if I were trying to sell our produce to make money. So it's just not something that we try to do. We meet the majority of our needs. We try to diversify our system more every year so we can meet even more of our needs. Right now, we're probably at about 80 to 85% of our calorific needs for the year come from this land, whether it's small grains, veggies from the garden, or meat, or wild harvested from the woods, or from the wetlands, or from our food forests that we've planted. But yeah, if you're interested in what we're doing, there's a lot of ways on our website that you can be involved. But yeah, please check us out. And thank you very much for the questions. All right. Thanks, guys.